Hi, this is Ralph Wilson with Web Marketing Today. We're in San Jose at the Search Engine Strategies Conference, and I'm talking with Jim Sterne and Bryan Eisenberg about continuous improvement. Now, back in the bad old days, I wrote for a total quality management publication, and we talked about continuous improvement. And some organizations have that as part of what they are, but I'm thinking about small to medium businesses. I think a lot of them are overwhelmed.
Well, I mean, definitely, the terminology is kind of frightening, right? I mean, it's lots of syllables.
What,
so that's first
total
place is
quality management.
So what do we mean by continuous improvement?
Well, it's exactly that. It's literally taking where you are today and on a regular basis making improvements to your online marketing, to your website, to keep getting additional gains.
But to make it a little less stressful, baby steps. Just be willing to make little changes all the time. The continuous part is the important bit.
I see small to medium businesses, they get their website up, they take a deep sigh because they've just spent a bunch of money.
Tick the box.
And now they don't come back to it until it's broken. How do you break that cycle? But I'm also convinced of this, that larger organizations are getting farther and farther up the scale, and larger retailers, because they're testing, because they're working deliberately at improvement, and small businesses, unless they do this, are really not going to be able to keep up.
Well, it's kind of like opening up a retail store, putting in all the fixtures, putting all the merchandise, but never replenishing the merchandise, never sweeping, never mopping, never cleaning the bathrooms, never worrying about what's in the parking lot. And if you do that, your business will continue along. May not be as well as it is,
And not for very long.
Yeah, and so that's really part of the problem. It really has to be a cultural issue, and it has to start from the top, because if not, it just doesn't work in small organizations.
So if you're at the top, how do you make this a cultural issue?
So it's a great question. In my newest book, Can Always Be Testing, there's actually a case study of one of our clients, and he complained to me for years.
Bryan's new book is called Always Be Testing.
He complained to me for years because he was never featured in any of our other books, even though he's been our longest continuous client. So I said, okay, you're going to get a chapter this time. But the fact is, what happened, he came to us when he was a 4-person organization. They were doing about $500,000 online, so not a lot of sales, but he realized that, the website had a lot of room for improvement. That's the one thing that was a constant that he knew it needed. He just didn't know where to start. And he came to us and we did a whole analysis, gave him a pick list of things to do. He left. Didn't hear from him for months. He just kept paying us to stay around. Today, he knocked off that list, did all of that. He's basically gotten on the Inc. 500 for a 2,300% growth year after year over the last 4 years, which is about the time we've been working together. And he'll tell you, it's that concept of, always focusing on, I'm not going to settle for where I am today, because there's always a chance to do something a little bit better.
And I agree. I think that does start at the top. The president, the founder, the CEO, whatever you call him, has to decide we are going to keep getting better at what we do, and we're not going to settle for just stopping.
We're going to make a space for it. We're going to make time for it. We're going to give people the resources so they're not locked into put out all these fires. There's time in the calendar that says, on Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock, we're going to have a meeting about how we're going to improve our website next week.
Right, and get recommendations from everybody in the organization, get recommendations from customers, really listen to what they're doing. I mean, unfortunately, it's a lot like being healthy. Right? You've got to take time to exercise. You got to take time to eat right, prepare the good foods, buy the good foods, and
get
all
enough
that.
sleep.
And I think it also relates to having a desire to keep learning.
Yes,
and keep improving. Yeah.
Well, learning allows you to improve. If you stop learning, you'll stop improving.
Right.
So even though we small business people are busy, we've got to determine, I'm going to stay up with my particular area.
So here's a tactic. If you're too busy to do stuff that you should do, for 2 days, make a list of everything that you do. When you finish a task, write down what it was. And at the end of the 2 days, look at those things you did that you could have paid somebody $10 an hour to do for you, and stop doing those things.
Or look at the list and say, which of these things really had importance to the bottom line of my business, and which were just make work.
And which were the things I did because I could get rid of them quickly. And you spend 2 days just doing the stuff that didn't matter.
It's a great exercise.
By the way, there's some great online tools for doing that. There's a solution, I think it's called like Harvest, that lets you do all this time management. Literally, you track down everything you've been doing all day long, and then you can recognize and tie it back into revenue and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, people need to see. I think once people see how they've been actually spending their time, they realize they're spending all their time working on the urgent, not the important. Yes. And it's when you focus on the important where you get real results.
On the internet, people can have some success, but I'm convinced the internet is the most competitive place in the world to do business. And therefore, we have to keep getting better because our competitors are. And our competitors are pulling away from us because they are focusing on constant incremental improvement.
Well, it's what happened with this guy. I mean, he was a tiny little company in a very competitive space. I mean, he was competing with companies like Comcast and just big behemoths. And literally, he's taken every one of his competitors, and they've gone out of business because he just got better at converting visitors than everybody else did. He was able to monetize his traffic, buy it cheaper. In this time, and again, he's still not a very big organization, but he's got, I think the number was close to 500,000 unique landing pages.
Wow.
Because he spent all the time planning content, doing all of that, realizing that when you work that hard, the efforts pay off in the long term.
And the first question to ask is, who are your customers? And why are they showing up? And if you've got a dozen different kinds of customers, you got your work cut out for you. If you have 100 different kinds, how many landing pages did he have? If you always ask yourself, how do I make this website better for the visitor? That's where you start to succeed.
Constant incremental improvement as a way of life is, I think, the only way we're going to stay ahead on the internet. Hey, thanks so much for sharing with us today. You've got a new book out.
Yep, Always Be Testing, Complete Guide to Google Website Optimizer. So let's people get started with those baby steps, basically for free. And in it, we give over 250 recommendations that they can start improving with.
Future Now.
FutureNowInc.com, and as well as our blog, which they can get a lot of the also free resources, grok.com.com.
And Jim, you're doing a conference.
The eMetrics Marketing Optimization Summit.
Great place to be. I'll be there.
eMetrics.org in Washington, D.C. in October.
And an independent consultant for businesses all over the world.
Absolutely.
You're one of the most traveled guys I know.
I have some frequent flyer miles. This is true.
This is Ralph Wilson with Web Marketing Today.